If you're looking for quality food storage for hiking, fishing, hunting, basic survival needs, or just for everyday use, check out our food storage line at carolinaprepper.com. We also carry other fine quality products such as our can concealment holsters for men and women. Keeping your firearm under cover and within reach puts confidence in your hands in any situation. Our products are 100% American made. Check us out today at carolinaprepper.com.
Knowles on the news. Susan Knowles.
And welcome everybody to Knowles on the news. And boy, I tell you, this is another day that you just don't know where to start. Seriously, you just don't know where to start. There's just so much going on that you could start at 1,000 different places, and it doesn't really make a difference where you start because it seems to all kind of run together, if you know what I mean. Let's start with kind of what I think is on a lot of people's minds, and that is North Korea. What are we going to do? Are we going to go over there and blast North Korea? Where are we right now? And I think that's on a lot of people's minds. I know last night people were thinking, well, we're just, is this the end times? Is everything just over? Are we done for? Are we going to war with North Korea? All these thoughts over and over. And I'll tell you, when you hear the president, when the president came out yesterday, it was a little disconcerting for some people. And I think it was very interesting because as they talk about in politics and in other things that we do, you look at body language, and body language can tell you a lot about what's going on. And our president, he typically stands straight. He doesn't, uses his hands, are usually moving if you're seeing his hands at all. And this time, when he was talking about the dictator in North Korea, he had his arms crossed. Did you notice that? The whole time he was talking about it, he had his arms crossed. And I think it's probably a significant in that it's a body language that North Korea would understand as meaning, I mean business. And he said to them some things, too, that I think also are indicative of I mean business. And that is... if he doesn't knock it off, essentially, if the dictator in North Korea doesn't behave himself, President Trump said, we'll meet him with fire and fury and, frankly, firepower, the likes of which the world has never seen before. That's pretty much right there. It tells you exactly what he intends to do if this dictator doesn't knock it off. Now, what have we seen over the last couple of days? Actually, we're talking about watching the dictator have let's see, what was it? 2 anti-ship missiles loaded onto a ship. He's talked about I'm going to go over and attack Guam, and in fact, that's what made the president come out last night and say what he said. So, are we getting to a point where we're talking about actually going to war with North Korea? We've seen in the past, we've seen how these people are, and when I say these people, I mean dictators in North Korea. They've always come out and against us and talked against us. They've always come out and sort of threatened us. But it's kind of heightened, if you will. I don't think that I've ever remember a dictator in the past that has been firing off missiles, a dictator that works with North Korea, a dictator that probably got the nuclear power that he needed from former President Clinton, who said, it's a good idea, let's just give them this. They're not going to do us any harm. Of course not. Of course not. But when you've got somebody like Iran working with North Korea, and they have all the money in the world to help North Korea, because remember, former President Obama gave them back the money that we had frozen in their assets. So they've got a ton of money to do whatever they want to do. So thank you, President Obama, former President Obama, for all that you've given to Iran so that they can help North Korea. So good to know that. So should we be worried? Well, if you listen to Rex Tillerson, he's saying no. absolutely not. Don't worry, be happy. I mean, it was kind of the word that came down today, is that, Americans should go ahead and sleep well at night. No problems. Now, he's on his way over to Guam right now, where recently North Korea said that's where they were going to strike. So, I don't know. It's a little disconcerting to me for him to say, don't worry, it's okay. And at the same time, he goes over to Guam. It's like, why are you going to Guam if there's nothing to worry about? Now, perhaps he's going over there to check everything out, make sure that we have the firepower we say we do in the event something happens. It's always wise to double check. But it doesn't really give me a lot of confidence in believing that everything's okay. It's one of these things that, I'm certainly, just like you are, I'm sure, going to watch and see what's really going on over the next couple of days. It's something that might blow over, and it's something that we might go forward and do what we said we were going to do. Now, depending on who you are, you either liked what the president said or you found that kind of disturbing coming from a president. If you're Judge Napolitano, a Fox News correspondent, former judge, he said that he thought that President Trump's speech was kind of way over the top. He didn't like it. He thought that it was too much talk about, nuclear war, reminded him of Hiroshima. And I'd have to agree with him when I heard him say this is more, fire and fury and more firepower than the world has seen before. It did cross my mind. So I think it was probably something that the dictator could understand and needed to hear, and that's why it was said that way. For some in the American public, it was a little disconcerting, and maybe it could have been worded a different way. I don't know. I frankly I'm okay with what he said, so I don't have any objections to it. I think it did, again, for some people it kind of rubbed them the wrong way, and maybe it could have been worded a little bit differently. I don't know. Not a big deal in my book. If it gave a really strong message and one that North Korea needed to hear and the only thing they could understand, then I'm perfectly okay with it. Now, as you might expect, John McCain had to get his 2 cents worth in immediately. He comes out and basically didn't like what the president had to say and said, I think the president should walk softly and carry a big stick. Well, John, how's that working for you? How's that working for the GOP? When you're reaching across the aisle and walking softly and carrying your big stick, which pretty much isn't so big anymore because you've just been reaching across this aisle so many times. I think you gave your stick over to the Democrats a long time ago. So let's let the president see. You're not president, John. You didn't get elected. I know it's hard for you to kind of get over that fact. You didn't get elected. This president can take it, and he'll decide what it is that he needs to do. We don't need you coming out like Maxine Waters does every 5 seconds and saying what the what the president should and shouldn't do. So let's leave that to those people that are elected officials in the White House. John, one of these days, will maybe be able to let that go, that he didn't get elected. I'm not sure. So that was kind of John McCain's opinion. And I don't know. I think that, other people have said they would just, I think it was Judge Napolitano, as a matter of fact, it said, I would just starve them out. There's no need really to go out and fight them. We'll just starve them out, and that'll work just as well. I don't know. I mean, starve who out? And in what way? Did he mean that literally, figuratively? I don't really know. Meaning, could have been that the sanctions will do the trick. But when you talk about the sanctions that they're using and what the impact of that's going to be, I think you have to remember how many people there are in North Korea that they live their lives like slaves. I mean, they really have no freedoms. They are totally dependent upon what the government does and what the government gives them. And the sanctions that we have leveled against North Korea, while it is going to hurt the leadership of North Korea, what it's really going to do, it's going to hurt the people of North Korea, and that's really the saddest part of all. So I don't know how much more you can starve people out. And people have thought, what can we do? How can we rectify this situation? Well, if you go in there and you take out the leader of North Korea, then what? Who are you going to put in his place? Is there somebody to put in his place? Again, that puts us back into regime change, and that's something that this president has said he really doesn't want to do. And, under the Obama administration, Hillary, John McCain, Obama, they were really into that regime change. I mean, it was, I think, more than the president, perhaps, at the time. John McCain wanted to go in there and get Assad out, and he wanted to arm the rebels, and that's what we did. And that didn't work out too well for us. And we were involved in Syria and still involved in Syria. And it was Obama, McCain, Hillary that got us into that position. So some people have said, well, what about South Korea? Well, what can South Korea do? When you have people over in North Korea and that many people, and let's say you open it up and say, okay, South Korea, you lead these people now. Do you really think that's going to be a workable solution? Because you have two different ideologies. These people in North Korea, for the most part, the majority of them, they've never known anything else. So they're going to, I would say, start right immediately sort of fighting back against South Korea. Because when you've never had a taste of freedom, you don't know what freedom is like. And you'll fight against that, I'm sure. So I don't know that that's the solution either. So I think we have our hands full, I guess what it boils down to. And I hope the people that are in charge, the generals that President Trump has put in place, I hope they know, they have a strategy. I hope they're a little bit better than the GOP and that they actually have a strategy, not this repeal and replace with no strategy and how we're going to do it. So, you have to put some confidence in place and hoping that they either have somebody in mind that they're going to slip in there if they get the dictator out, or they have another plan where the dictator can stay, but they'll just be be sanctioned by the UN, which the UN was unanimous in sanctioning them. But a lot of times these sanctions don't work, so you have to have this fallback plan, and hopefully we have that going forward. But for now, as I said, Rex Tillerson has said, no problem, everything's fine. I got it all here. I got it all under control. I'm just going to Guam just for a quick visit, and everything is okay. So maybe this is just words in order to, make the dictator believe that, we are going to do what we say. And I think under this president, we would actually do what we say we're going to do in the event that's our last choice. And hopefully that is our last choice. I don't think, we're spread pretty thin. And I see, now news saying that that we already have, really, we're putting contractors in Afghanistan to fight, something like 5,000 plus contractors, private contractors that we're sending to Afghanistan to fight it because it's cheaper to do that. We don't have to spend so much money on our military. And, you have to wonder, is that also because we're spread pretty thin? We've been in, how long have we been in Afghanistan? 16 years? I don't know. It's probably longer than that by now. But it's been a really, really long time. And we're over in Syria, and we're fighting these little, things that come up here and there. I don't know how much more than we can do. And North Korea, with just a sheer number of people they have. I mean, I know people are saying, well, you could just drop one bomb and that, takes care of it. It's yes. I mean, that would take care of the military, certainly. But again, in some ways, if you're a compassionate country, and we are, you have to think about those poor people over there who, yes, they do worship the dictator, because that's from birth, that's what they're told to do, and that's what they believe. And they're innocent in that regard because they know nothing else. And as you know, with the dictator, you'd better not have another thought than the one that he tells you to have. So, again, I hope it doesn't come down to war, but if it does, I know that we will do whatever we need to do to make it happen, and we will be successful. Um, one of the things that has kind of come up recently in the news is our talk about H.R. McMaster. I know you've probably seen that, National Security Advisor, a lot of talk about him. I think it's trying to be, hushed up a little bit in mainstream media. So I don't know how much you're seeing, other than the fact that you are seeing people like CARE and those on the left come out in support of McMaster, because there's been a real movement, it seems, on the right to get rid of him, to fire him. Now, you may think, well, gosh, I don't understand that because, he's the person that was chosen by Donald Trump. Why would we go ahead and fire somebody like that? Obviously, the president loves generals. He's, surrounded himself with generals. And a lot it boils down to what McMaster has been doing. So one of the things that he did as he came in, under Michael Flynn, when Michael Flynn was the National Security Advisor before he was sort of let go, now under investigation with the whole Russia scenario going on with Mueller, the special counsel. He hired some people, one of them being Ezra Cohen Watnick, who was the senior director for intelligence programs. He was hired by Flynn, and so was Rich Higgins. He was, I don't know if I know his title here, he was a former Pentagon official who served in the NSC's Strategic Planning Office as a director for strategic planning, so had a very high position. Now, immediately almost when McMaster came in, he wanted to get rid of people, and he did start firing these people. And it seemed as though Bannon and Kushner kind of, got him to, were on the bandwagon to get him to not fire these people. And Trump went along with it, and so these people didn't get fired. But if you may recall, one of the reasons, supposedly, that McMaster wanted to fire Cohen Watnick because he was one of two people that summoned Devin Nunes from California. Remember him, the House Intelligence Committee chairperson? He summons him to the White House and showed him information regarding how Trump and other people in the campaign were surveilled, right? So I don't know if that made McMaster upset. I don't know why that would upset him. I don't know if it was the fact that he was just a Flynn hire and he wanted to hire his own people. I don't know. But in any event, he said, okay, we'll let you stay around. We'll just see how it goes. But in July, just recently, he fired Cohen Watnick and basically said, he's a great guy, but he's not the people we need right now, that I need right now in this position. So, bye-bye. And Cohen Watnick and Higgins were both Trump loyalists. So people are saying, well, what is this? You get rid of these Trump loyalists and you're keeping the Obama people. So immediately they're very suspicious of what he's doing. In addition, as I said, he terminated Rich Higgins. Now, Rich Higgins came out with a memo that some people have denied now, saying, oh, no, he never wrote the memo. But he's been on the media, mainstream media, talking about the memo. So we know there's a memo. And he was talking about how there were Maoists and other people who were kind of plotting to harm the president. So supposedly after this memo, McMaster's like, okay, time for you to go. You're out. And he just, he continues to fire these people. And again, Trump loyalists. He fired additional people. And also, one of the things that Higgins did that kind of makes us even more suspicious that McMaster would let him go is that he pushed for declassification of documents having to do with radical Islam and Iran. Now, according to what we know and research I've done on McMaster, and again, I have an article up at SusanKnowles.com that I wrote on McMaster that gives you the whole layout on kind of what I'm talking about here, goes into more detail. But McMaster kind of views Islam the way that Obama did. His strategy about foreign policy is very similar to Obama's and not President Trump. I don't know about you, but to me, I'm not too comfortable with that. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, he doesn't like to say radical Islam because he thinks that anybody who's radical like that, who's a terrorist, is un-Islamic. Okay, doesn't make sense, I know, but that's what he said, supposedly. And he was also very instrumental in saying, you know, Iran, that deal that we did, that nuclear deal that we did with the Obama administration, did with Iran, hey, you know what? Iran is not violating their agreement. Everything's cool. Let's just keep going on the agreement. And he was the one that kind of got Trump to just kind of move on and ignore Iran for the time being. And there's rumors that now that John Kelly has come in as chief of staff, that it's even emboldened McMaster to do more things, to move ahead with his, his ideas of foreign policy and not the president's. So I don't know if any of what we're seeing in North Korea, I don't know how much of that has to do with McMaster, if anything at all. But I think he's a guy that we certainly need to keep our eyes on. From the very beginning, before he was even put in place, I didn't like him because I know that he's a globalist. He's an elitist, and I don't like that. That makes me nervous. And we're finding out also, if I can find my articles here quickly, that he is part of an organization. He has been for the past 11 years. The Institute for Strategic Studies, the IISS. Probably International Institute for Strategic Studies. He's been a member, as I said, for 11 years. And we found out last week, thanks to Breitbart, because Breitbart had suspicions that there was a link somewhere that they weren't seeing on the donors list. And it turns out once they went to the Institute and said, hey, where are these people that we know should be on the donor list? Where are they? They were suddenly put on the donors list. And I think they had actually been removed and then put back after Breitbart complained about it. And what am I talking about? Who were the donors that were on this list? Well, the George Soros Open Society Foundation and other Soros financial groups were on that list. Now, are you happy with that? I'm not saying, I can't even say that McMaster knew that Soros was a donor, but you'd have to kind of think, this is a guy who's the head of the national security, right? He's a national security advisor. You would expect him of anyone, of all people that you could name, that he would be the one that would know something like that, whether George Soros was involved. And if he did know, he must have been pretty comfortable with it because he was a member, like I said, for 11 years. This is not really being talked about that much in the mainstream media. It's something I think they really don't want you to know. But again, it's something that I think the word needs to get out there and be looked at, especially when you have a guy who is supposedly becoming more emboldened, that we know that follows more of the Obama ideology than anything else. And let's not forget, back in April, he sent Susan Rice a letter saying to her, hey, Susan, you can go ahead and keep your top secret clearance that you have right now. There's no reason for you or for us to, put you down to secret or classified or just take away your clearance at all because you don't really need it. No, in this letter said, you can go ahead and keep it. Now, some people have argued, okay, but the reason he did that is because she needed to prepare for that Senate committee hearing. Two things that come to mind. Number one, I don't know if back in April, and then like the very beginnings of April, if the Senate had even asked her to come forward and testify, number one. Number two, in that letter, it didn't really shrink the scope of what she could do. In fact, it said that she had basically unfettered ability to look at anything. So, for example, anything that she may have written or seen or reviewed or something of that nature, I would expect them to say, okay, if you need to prepare for a Senate hearing, you can look at that. But they said to her, you can look at everything. And that would include, in my mind, because the letter didn't say it was anything prior to President Trump coming in. I'm assuming by the letter, because there were no limitations, that she could even look at top secret clearance coming from the White House today. So you're talking about a person that everybody has talked about and said this woman was involved in unmasking. Whether it was true or not, we've got to say this is being talked about. You got to be cautious, right? This is a person who has connections still, I'm sure, with Obama. There are claims that he is part of the deep state, just like she is. And so what do? We give her the ability to look at top secret information today and anything in the past. Doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know that President Trump knew that when he came out and said, hey, McMaster's doing a great job. I have all confidence in him, because there was talk. He said, we're working well together. He's a good man and very pro-Israel. I'm grateful for the work he continues to do serving our country. And I think when he made that statement, he was not aware that Susan Rice was given her top secret clearance, a continuation to have that, based upon a letter from McMaster. Now, whether or not that would have changed his opinion, I don't really know. But I guess we will never know. And I don't know what he's thinking now. Like, what is the president thinking now that he knows about Susan Rice? Is he okay? Is he comfortable with the fact that there's that was done? Would he take that opinion back? I don't know. But for me, all of these things make McMaster very suspicious to me, and make his continuation in his role very suspicious for me. I see him as not being on the same page with the president. And I don't like that. I don't want an Obama foreign policy. And there's also been talk, well, let's just send him over to Afghanistan and he can work from there. I don't know. I mean, that makes no sense to me, in that you would have a national security advisor outside of the United States, sort of permanently sitting there in Afghanistan, when isn't he needed in the United States to communicate with what's going on in and outside of the United States all over the world? So I don't know if it's like, well, let's just put him in a place that he won't cause so much damage, and we can work around him that way. I don't know. In any event, I know that President Trump likes to surround himself by generals. I get it. But not every general is going to have the same ideology that you do, Mr. President. And I think this is a man that you need to keep your eyes on and find out what he's going to do. And it makes me nervous about John Kelly. Now, is John Kelly the man that we think he is? I'm hoping he is. I'm hoping he doesn't have the same ideologies and mindset that McMaster does. And again, it's just something that, we will need to keep our eyes on. Now, in other news, I wrote an article yesterday at SusanKnowles.com in regards to the DHS hiring, the Department of Homeland Security. I don't know if you remember, but back in January, there was an executive order that was signed by President Trump right away. We all saw the signing. We all loved the signing because it talked about that his executive order said we need to immediately hire 15,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents. Great. It's like I couldn't be happier. I'm thinking this is really, really good news. And we were just assuming everything was being done. They're going out there, they're interviewing. And after all, we had John Kelly, who was the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security at the time. So you're kind of confident, that he's out there doing his job, getting things done. Well, not so much. There is just when you think things are going well, the Office of Inspector General came out with a report recently that said, oh, gosh, there's a little problem here because we're not equipped in the DHS to hire these people. What does that mean exactly? You're not equipped. You're the DHS. Well, there's a little problem. First of all, we don't have enough HR people to handle all of these people. Secondly, we don't have really a plan to follow. Let's say, where should these people be placed? How many should be placed there? What's the strategy that we need for these people? And they talked about sort of like how long it would take to process all of these people. They have to be polygraphed, background check, you name it. And you have to have people to even do that. So if those people aren't in place, how are you going to get the other people in place? Now, part of this surprised me because, again, we had John Kelly in charge. I expect, because President Trump came out and said John Kelly's doing such a great job, over at the DHS, I expected things to be kind of moving along at the directive of the president. And I didn't hear John Kelly telling anybody, at least, I wasn't privy to that information. Hey, Mr. President, we have a problem here because we are just not equipped to do what the executive order tells us that we need to do. Also, there's a problem in that John Kelly inherited probably a mess. And there's probably a better word to use for it, egregious mess, catastrophic mess, from the Obama administration. Because if you recall, for the past 8 years, the Border Patrol and ICE weren't allowed to do their jobs under Obama. They were more like at a stand down, if you will. And you know that during that time that he wasn't hiring people. If he did, it was minimal. I'm sure that every strategic plan that was ever thought of was never thought of under the Obama administration, because they didn't want people placed anywhere, because they wanted illegal immigrants to stay in this country as long as possible. They wanted, they just didn't want them to do their jobs, and we remember that. So can you imagine what Kelly inherited? And what the next person, Elaine Dukes right now, I think is as acting head of the DHS, what that person is inheriting. How can you turn that around? I would imagine that the department is still suffering from low morale, because now they're happy. I'm sure that Trump is there and allowing them to do their job. But when they bring people back, when they go out and they want to go and do their jobs and find the illegals, who's there supporting them? And we're the 15,000 other people we were promised that were going to go out and help us. So we got a real problem on our hands with the DHS, a problem that's got to be resolved quickly, or it's going to end up like the VA. It's going to be an utter failure and an utter mess. Now, let's assuming that report, I went right to the report. So this isn't mainstream media putting a spin on it. This is the actual report. And I have a link in there in my article at SusanKnowles.com if you want to go there and check it out yourself. It's not good. And I don't know if they've hired anybody since January, because it sounds like they've just taken so much time saying what we can't do that they haven't done anything towards what they should be doing right now under this executive order. And it makes me a little nervous, wondering how many executive orders did the president sign, where a lot of people aren't doing what the order was intended for them to do. So that's a little problem. I mean, we do see the VA doing things, putting in that telehealth, letting veterans call and make their own appointments, things of that nature coming in. So we see the VA is anyway doing things with the executive order. I also know that personally, because a friend of mine who is a renowned, well-known whistleblower at the VA now has a new job with the Office of Accountability, working under, the president's orders, the executive orders. So, and he's going to be working with whistleblowers and making sure that the information that needs to come out about the VA is going to be able to come out, and these people are going to be protected when they do. When they do blow the whistle. So maybe the DHS is the only one right now having some problems. I mean, let's hope that is the case, and let's hope that they get these problems fixed quickly. We need these 15,000 people out here. There's an issue. We have so many of these sanctuary cities who are not obeying the law, who need people to come in there in those sanctuary cities and clear them out. As you know, Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, came out recently and said, you know what, we're going after these people, and we're going to do it first by sanctions. I say sanctions, not really sanctions, but exactly what it amounts to. They're going to withhold the federal funds in these sanctuary cities as long as they continue to hold illegal immigrants and protect them. I mean, it's so ridiculous. As we've heard before in these press conferences, there are MS-13 people that are being protected in these sanctuary cities. I mean, it's the life of Riley there for them because they know they can go there. They've got everybody else scared who's in the neighborhoods. Nobody's going to turn in the MS-13. And certainly the politicians, like the mayor, isn't going to turn them in. And so they can just wreak havoc on any sanctuary city that they want to, or just hide out, whatever they want to do. And we have people now like this wonderful Rahm Emanuel and the mayor of Chicago. The guy who has so many murders and killings and shootings and, on and on and on in that city, that basically it surpasses New York and Los Angeles. And now we hear that just yesterday there was a guy they were just standing on the street corner in Chicago. One guy gets shot in the back, dies at the scene, and 6 others get shot and are injured and at the hospital. So, I mean, this is like a day in the life of Chicago, I guess. I don't know. I mean, in certain neighborhoods, apparently so. And so what does Rahm Emanuel do? He doesn't say, you know what, maybe there is a problem here. Maybe we've got some illegal gang members here. Maybe we've got some MS-13 in our sanctuary cities. Maybe we've got to protect our people more here in the city. The taxpayers, the people who are legally here. Maybe we got to do that. No. Of course not. It's kind of like Paris, someone is saying in the comments. And it exactly is. We're not going to do that. Rahm Emanuel's not, because he is a far left leaning Democrat. And so what's the first thing that you want to do when you fall into that category? Well, of course you want to say, you know what? You withholding those federal funds, that's blackmail. So anytime now that you uphold the law and you follow the law, it's blackmail. It is, and if you're Rahm Emanuel, and it's so funny to watch these people like Rahm Emanuel who allows his city to break the laws, right? The immigration laws, the one that says you can't have illegal immigrants in the United States. When they're breaking the law, they're pointing the finger back at everybody else, saying, "Oh, you broke the law. That's illegal. You can't do that." Really? If it's illegal and you can't do it, why are you doing what you're doing then, Rahm? So Rahm is filing a lawsuit saying, nope, this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. You can't do that to us. You're taking the federal funds from the Byrne Act, B-Y-R-N-E, and it's, by the way, it's named after a police officer who was gunned down in New York, who was just sitting in his squad car and got gunned down. So that's what he's doing. And he's saying, you're taking the money away from the police officer, so you're hurting us. No, first of all, you're like, Rahm, you're like a kid in a candy store who goes in there and, picks up everything, eats the candy, gets sick, and then blames somebody else for it. That's what you're doing. Or you hit somebody, like if you're a kid. I'm keeping it on the kid level because this is something that you would understand, Rahm. You hit a kid in class, somebody tells on you, and then you get mad at the person who told on you because, but for them telling on you, you wouldn't have gotten in trouble. Never seeing that, but for you hitting that child in the first place, you would never have been in the trouble that you're in. So you see, all logic goes out the window when you're a left-leaning liberal, communist, progressive. Did I say that? Yes, I did. So that's where we have right now. That's where we're at with Rahm Emanuel. And he's not the only one. We're getting, California, of course, is sitting there going, should we go along with this too? Should we file a lawsuit? We've already hired Eric Holder's law firm here. So now the only question is, should we go ahead and use him and go against this? And probably they will. I mean, why not? If you've got all the other Democrats going along with it, they're apt to go along with it too. Now, there are some people who are saying that Rahm Emanuel just trying to do this now to take the focus off the fact of how many people are actually dying in his city every day. And so that, come October, when the money is due to really be taken away from them, he'll be like, oh, okay, all right, well, let's go ahead. You win. You're right. We're not a sanctuary city. And here's the thing about Rahm. Just like any good progressive that follows the Saul Alinsky rule book, if you go to my article at SusanKnowles.com, you can read what I wrote about, fully in this about Rahm Emanuel and this article. But he doesn't call Chicago a sanctuary city. He's very careful not to do that. He calls it a welcoming city. So he wants to mince words now, like this is attorneys speak again. So he can say, no, we're not officially a sanctuary city. So officially you can't take that federal funds away from us. We haven't declared ourselves as a sanctuary city. We walk like a duck, talk like a duck, and quack like a duck, but it doesn't mean we're a duck. That's the argument that Rahm Emanuel is trying to use. It's not going to work. I don't care if you call yourself XYZ city, as long as you're acting like a sanctuary city and doing everything that they do. If that's against the law, pretty much the court should find in the favor of the Trump administration, assuming that they're not fully run by the left-wing Democrats themselves. So we'll see what happens in October. We'll see if people are willing to lose millions of dollars. And while that is kind of it's only a fraction of the budget for Chicago, it is something that can hurt. And I don't know if he's going to be able to go out there and find, dig deeper in the citizens' pockets of Chicago and get what they need. I know California continues to put their hand in our pockets, and they'll continue to do that if they decide to file suit and if they lose their money. It's just absolutely amazing, the stuff that you hear out of the politicians' mouths. I know it shouldn't be surprising, but it is, and it's disappointing each and every time. So, but speaking of California, speaking of people who think that nothing is illegal, right? As long as they're doing it, nothing is illegal. Thank goodness for Judicial Watch, because without them, there would be so much that we don't know. They recently sent a letter to California, to the Secretary of State there, Padilla, and said basically, if you don't remove from the rolls the persons who have become ineligible to vote by reason of death, change in residence, or a disqualifying criminal conviction, and remove all non-citizens who have registered to vote unlawfully, he gave him 14 days to respond and 90 days to correct that, or that he would go to court and sue them. Well, California registers illegals and everybody else to vote automatically once they get a driver's license. And illegals now can get a driver's license in California. So I don't know how Judicial Watch is going to stop California from doing a practice that they feel is very legitimate, should be done. And when you ask them, well, why are you registering illegals to vote if they can't vote, and if you're saying they're not voting? Their response is kind of, well, but they may not always be illegals. They may, in fact, one day be citizens. Okay. And how does that work? It doesn't. But that's the logic you get in California. So anyway, Judicial Watch now is saying there were more total registered voters than there were adults over the age of 18 living in each of the following 11 counties that actually voted. Okay? So now listen to this. Imperial County, very big county, 102% they are finding there. Los Angeles was at, I believe, from anywhere between 112% to 144%. All of this illegal voting. San Diego, huge county, 138%. And San Francisco, 114%. So weren't they the ones telling President Trump, there's no voter fraud in California. There's no voter fraud anywhere in the United States. And yet we get this from Judicial Watch saying, oh, yes, but there is. And I believe that California is one state that has refused to turn over their voter information to the federal government. Well, now you know why. I mean, seriously, how much worse could it get? And I know I told you back when we were voting this time, I voted in the same place for years. It's always in California. It's typically at a school site, in the school auditorium, big auditorium. It's where we all go to vote. But when it came time to vote for President Trump, suddenly your polling place was changed. I voted in a garage, in somebody's garage. Now, that's not unusual for California, but it's unusual that they moved everybody. And it was supposedly a big election, so they put us in very small places like a garage. Makes no sense. And then when we don't have to show ID in California. You just go in, you say, hey, I'm John Doe. Okay, here you go. Here's your ballot. Go vote. Have a nice day. And when I went in to vote, they gave me the Democrat ballot. And then I had to go back and say, you've given me the wrong ballot here. And there was I can't remember now, some other things. I had to go back twice to get the right ballot to vote. Now, most people would have just gone on and voted. So I'd have to believe, maybe I was the only person that happened to. Maybe everybody else, maybe it was smooth sailing. But I have to believe that they tried everything that they could do to make sure that Donald Trump didn't win in California. Even parking cars, which I called and complained about at the Registrar of Voters office, with stickers on the cars that you were visible and very close to the voting booth in the garage that was for Hillary Clinton and had different things on it that were anti-Trump. And I'm like, you better get the cars moved out of here because this is a violation of the voter law. So to me, everything that they could do in California that they did. Now, again, perhaps I was the only person that it happened to, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it sure wasn't my experience. So we shall see what comes out of everything. I do think that they are going to find a lot of voter fraud. And you and I both know that. And if... I've heard every excuse. Oh, well, we don't want to hand you over this information just because there's so much private and personal information here. We don't want this getting out. Okay, well, cover up part of the name then and give us the last 4 digits of the Social Security number. We'll take that. I got to come up with some other excuse now. So, California, I don't know. You need to get your act together, as does the rest of the country. If there's no voter fraud, turn over the information. Let's resolve it. If there is voter fraud, as the Judicial Watch told California, you need to get these people off of your rolls. We don't need dead people, illegal, non-citizens, and people voting 5,000 times, on your voter rolls. Get them off of there. Let's make this a fair voting and for 2018 and beyond. And I guarantee you, they're not going to do what it's going to take. It's going to take more sanctions or more, of Sessions coming out and saying this is what we're going to do in the event that you don't follow what we've asked you to do. I mean, I know states' rights is great, but voting in an election for president, hate to tell you this, states, but that's it falls under federal law. And you need to obey that. We're not talking about an election that goes within your state and that's all it goes to. Even then, I think you're going to have some problems because of it is actually voting. But, not going to even argue that case right now. But clearly, when you're talking about a vote for the entire nation, that's involving federal law. So give it up. Give it up. Give the information and move on. Now, another thing that I wanted to kind of touch on today. I don't know. Again, you're not hearing too much of this in the news. One, this is kind of a side thing, just to lighten the mood. I think you'll get a kick out of this. Hillary Clinton's pastor. Let me say that again because that was hard putting those two words together, Hillary Clinton and pastor. But Hillary Clinton's pastor has come out with a new book. From what I can see, it's all about Hillary Clinton's daily devotions. And Hillary supposedly told her pastor that she is ready to be a spiritual leader. So, there you go. Maybe politics not turning out so well for her. And she's going to want to try her hand at the spiritual end of it, right? Politics on one hand, spiritual religion on the other. And she didn't, she didn't say religion. She said spiritual leadership. So I guess that can encompass a lot of things. We'll have to wait and see exactly what that means. So if you're looking for a new church, you might find the new church of Hillary Clinton somewhere down the street. I don't know. Anyway, just had to throw that out there. Like I said, just kind of lighten the mood every now and then. Now, I think back to the serious stuff. The Democratic Party doesn't know what to do with itself. It's watched its base just leave. It's watched people go just saying, I don't even know who you are. You've left me. The governor of West Virginia, one example, saying, I don't even know who this Democrat Party is. They left me a long time ago. I'm going to go over and become a Republican. And he did. He joined us, Great. But you have recently the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, headed by Representative Ben Lujan he's a Democrat from New Mexico. He came out and said, you know what? We need to change kind of what we're doing. We're kind of excluding people, and we need to be more inclusive. Now, wait a minute. The Democrats were excluding people? I thought they were always the coexisters, the one that, we need to follow their example of, right? I guess not. So anyway, he was saying that they're not going to have a litmus test anymore. They're not going to just look at, pro-choice Democrats. No, we're now going to open it up to pro-life Democrats. I mean, can you even imagine that the Democrat Party is talking like that? I mean, let that sink in for a moment. So we don't want you if you're pro-life. We only want the pro-choice people. But now they're saying, you know what, maybe we ought to let those pro-lifers in. We don't have to. We're so desperate right now, we're going to let the pro-life people in. That's what they're saying. They're saying we've lost so many seats. Nothing's working for us. We've kind of excluded God, out of our conventions. So I don't even know what the problem is, but now let's just try to bring back in some pro-life people, and maybe this will help us. And when they're saying that, they don't really mean that they're embracing pro-life theology, right? They're not saying that. The philosophy of pro-life, no, we don't like it. But we're saying we're going to tolerate it because we're desperate. We need you. So we need you people to come on back and represent us now. And he says, as we look at candidates across the country, you need to make sure you have candidates that fit the district, that can win in these districts. So not every district, of course, is pro-choice. Now, you might expect somebody within their party to say, whoa, well, wait a minute, I'm not on board with this. Well, no, here's somebody else that you may not have expected would come out and say something. Cecile Richards, the head of Planned Parenthood. The ones that organization that you and I are forced to give our money to, that aborts babies, sells body parts, those people, those accusations of selling body parts. For films that we're not allowed to see now because they're no longer available, those ones. Well, she's not too happy with the DCCC. And she said, look, the authority, Planned Parenthood, telling the politicians what they should do. She said, we hold any politician who says otherwise accountable. She argued that including pro-life candidates in the party would alienate women. So there you go, women. She's spoken for you, saying that anybody that comes in as a Democrat is alienating the party. And women are going to be alienated from the party. Now, even I have to say this, and hold on to your hats on this one because you're not going to believe this, but even Governor Jerry Brown says, you know what, we can't keep excluding pro-life people. We need to bring pro-life people back into the Democrat Party. And he said, he also said that abortion, it wasn't that long ago that Catholic Democrats opposed abortion, and that some believe today, the same thing that was believed 50 years ago, and we shouldn't be excluding those people. So here's Jerry Brown, about as far left as you could go, other than Gavin Newsom, who wants to be governor so bad of California that he can't help himself. He's coming out and saying, oh, wait a minute there, Cecile, that's a little bit really far left, and we're not going to get people in the party if we keep talking like that. And so Cecile says, and listen to this talk, trading away women's health and rights will just alienate one of the most powerful political forces in this country. That's what she's saying. If you bring in those pro-life people, this is what's going to happen. She also says access to safe, legal abortion is central to women's economic empowerment and bodily autonomy. So you're not going to be powerful, women. Just know that. You won't have bodily autonomy if the Democrats bring in those pesky little pro-lifers. She also said that most of America agrees that 7 in 10 Americans support Roe versus Wade, that access to abortion has more support than any political party in the country. And she said we will never be able to move this country forward if we are leaving women behind. That's why 4 women marched in January, and they keep showing up. She said the future is female. So all you males out there, listen up, because Cecile Richards is speaking to you now. The future is female. It's time for politicians to listen to women. They have 3 options: lead, follow, or get out of the way. So there you go. There's your Democrat Party today. These are the people that represent your Democrat Party. And I know you're not Democrat, the people who are listening, but for those of you who have Democrat friends, this is their party. This is what they believe. This is a woman who is just like Hillary Clinton, believes the same exact thing. And men have no place in the Democrat Party, it sounds like, according to Cecile Richards. Cecile Richards, I tell you, would not want to be standing beside her in any line, or especially if it's raining outside, with lightning might strike. I'd want to get away from her as fast as I can. The word evil comes to mind. I'm just saying there's an energy around there that is pretty evil. Now, other pro-choice people said this is a betrayal of every woman who has ever supported the Democratic Party. So if you want to bring in those pro-life people, the ones that we hate in the Democrat Party, then this is a betrayal to us. And by the way, it's going to be a betrayal if you bring in men, right? Cecile has spoken. Democrats supporting anti-choice candidates is an attack on progressive values. Got that right. Equality is impossible without reproductive rights, period. There you go. That's the kind of speak that you're getting from the left these days. So, if you wonder why you don't have anything in common with them, I guess you know the answer. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for being here on Knowles on the News. Until next time, God bless you. Take care. We'll see you again next week.